Okay, let's get started. We'll call the meeting to order. I need a motion to accept the August 31st, 2021 minutes. Thanks. Second. Sue, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Okay, first up, medical examiners. Bob, can you come up there? The revenue is on page 2, and expenses are 27 and 28. Sure. Go ahead, Bob.
Because they're on the revenues. There's nothing to speak about, right, Bob?
Yeah, on the revenue, so.
Right.
So we're
Pretty much standard. Is there, there should be equipment in there for the office that added.
there.
27 and 28.
I saw that. 27 and 28, where it's in there. The cabinets and
Machine copier.
27.
Yeah, file cabinet, $750.
Big copier and fax machine.
Still open here.
Chairman,
Go ahead, Melissa.
yes, in that line, there's $750, which covers the 3 filing cabinets that have been ordered for the new office that the coroners will be moving to after the first of the year. Any computer equipment, that'll be coming from the IT budget.
And fax machine, phones, that's all.
Yes, that's all being taken care of as well.
Melissa, does that mean the money is, if they're already ordered, is that out of this year's budget and we don't need it in next year's budget?
For those items, yes, that was placed this year.
So this $750 does not need to be here?
The $750 does, because that's the filing cabinets. Those have not been ordered yet.
Okay.
The other equipment has been ordered. That's taken care of already, but the $750 we do need for next year.
Okay.
The hospital, for the morgue, there will be no increase for next year. I spoke to the Surcharge of the morgue, and she said it's going to stay what we're paying currently, morgue charges. I just talked to Dr. Sikorica's office, and at this point, they're not prepared to increase. That could change, but it doesn't look like it.
The hospital, they were going to increase the capacity of storage.
Yep, they did. They're in the process. It's not finished yet. They're waiting on the cooler to come and the shelving. They'll have room for 12 on one side. They started the construction and decided there'll be room for 4 in their capacity.
It should reduce costs for
With
funeral homes.
without renting cooler space to kill them.
That?
And this year, under education, training, and staff development, we budgeted $38.50. We only spent $622, probably because you can't go anywhere because of COVID. There's probably no. If that's there, Brian, could you amend that and buy the cabinets this year? Like $3,000 or less still in there, with 3 months to go.
Yeah.
I like it.
Why not?
So we can buy it out of this year's budget.
Right.
Do you have any training plans?
The conference, there was a fall conference, which I went, and that's already been approved and paid for already. There will be conferences again next year. They're gonna start the conferences and training again, but right now, at this point, there's no more conferences scheduled for the remainder of this year.
Make that budget amendment and finance next week.
So the question is, when did you have the conference? Is it already out of there?
I just came back from it this past weekend.
Oh, it might not be paid out of there yet, but there might still be $750 left.
Sure. But it was approved at the August board meeting for me to go.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
price just hasn't been paid out of that yet, but I remember what the cost was, about
I think it was around $550 to $600.
there's $750 left. So you don't even need a formal budget amendment because it's a 4-to-a form, you can do it with a letter to Brian.
Right.
We don't even have to amend it, we can just take that out. Done.
Yep.
Like it.
For the rest of the year, is there any mandatory training or anything?
Not for the remainder of this year, we'll start up again in January. There will be Corner 101 in February, and then for those of us for accreditation, there'll be classes in August, in March, and September.
They travel to classes, they're gonna be Zoom or?
Travel to, the conferences are usually in Syracuse area.
Anything else?
Give me the .4 letter so I can move it to the account.
You buy the file cabinets now?
Yeah, and you can buy the file, so that everything's ready to go the first of the year, you don't have to wait for a budget. You'll already have them. So the extra $750 out of your.
Al?
You said that the costs weren't going up, but your budget's up $25,000. Is that because we were under budget this year?
It's all medical physician's expense.
Right, physician expenses and autopsies were up this year. I think they were worried about that for next year.
Right, so you went from 125 to 150, but you think 125 might have been too low?
Yes.
Okay. You're at 84 now, with 3 months to go, could be close.
It was 159 last year.
Actually, 4 months ago, because this was as of August 31st, right? Yeah, September, October, November, and December. Yeah. There might be a budget amendment in our future, but right. Probably gonna be a lot of.
Any other questions for Bob? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Weights and measures? Guess I'm on Zoom somewhere.
There he is.
Oh, there he is, Dan.
Here's it, Dan.
The weights and measures, there's, revenues are on page 17. So Dan, you want to start with, revenues?
Sure, yeah, all the revenue I get is just the state contract for the petroleum quality testing and barely any fines here and there.
Basically, flat on revenue and flat on expenses.
Any questions about the revenues? The expenses are 78, pages 78 and 79.
I believe everything is the same as it was last time, so.
Is everything working out good in Salem?
Yeah, it is so far. I'm just waiting to get my storage shed, which I told was ordered, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Al, it was like an $8,000 increase in employee benefits, hospital medical insurance for one employee.
It won't be that. It had to be spread across several funds based on salary. Right. It'll be what it'll be. It's not it won't be a real increase to his department. But if you look at this is one of those uncomfortable, big goes with net cost. Right, so you had the Christian philosophy to put it all in 1 month so you can see it. And then you have the net cost philosophy, which Brian and I kind of embrace. The only downside of the net cost is budgetarily, you spread it, you have to figure out a way to spread it across the fund.
And it's not that close.
And it's not.
And he's a one-man department.
It won't
do it.
So in a smaller department, it's a glaring difference.
Understood.
But the actual will be the actual. We're wrong. Right. And and all the budgets in total will still be no more than the total of the fund.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Dan? Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
John, you're up. The coroner's supposed to go last, that's what Bob said. Revenues, pages 10 and 11, we'll start there.
So you got any questions for me?
Go ahead, Dave.
2020 actual, talks about 132 revenues, 2020, but yet we're cutting department requests and revenues, $5,000.
Which page are you on?
Page 11. Code enforcement, your revenues in 2020 was 132.5. Department request for next year is $127,000.
For incoming, yes. We lost Kingsbury, which is a pretty good-sized chunk of, the work. This is a stupid question, but under code enforcement, fines and forfeited bail. That was the only thing that we could fit it in under for a heading. We have certain revenues that you can't put anyplace else. They're basically fines. Building without permits. Fine people. Building without permits, things like that.
If you take them to court and stuff, there could be a penalty imposed.
Yeah, that changes year to year, sometimes you get a bunch, sometimes you don't have any.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Well, there's no teeth in it, if you can't do something, do them. And then I'll come back to the zero in there because it's still red.
Yeah.
And then also back to the county.
Well, a big part of it too is now that we're actually canceling permits, after we sent that letter last year saying you have till the end of the year, and now we're canceling it. Now, if people are calling us back after they get the cancellation letter and they want to reopen it, they pay that original fee again, and we put that under the heading of fine. Gotcha. So that's why there's a big difference. Gotcha.
Would you like, to state for the record that you're not the head of code enforcement?
I think he does, but maybe we ought to put this letter into the record.
I am the head of, code enforcement, but Bob is my right-hand man. Mr. Hankey, he's in charge of the complaint department.
Your wingman just got his wings clipped. Love that raise.
I think that goes.
If he handles the complaints, I'll waive that.
We'll put that, his raise will go to fines and forfeitures.
Might be a mental health line, actually.
That's closer.
For that. So, any more questions about revenues? Expenses are on pages 54 to 55. Oh, excuse me, that's probation, 62 to 63.
Just comment.
Yeah, just bookmark it. 62 to 63.
Big change in those, was the, salaries, wages, employees' benefits. That went up 13,000 between 2021 and 2022.
It's extra people.
No, that's just the price. What I understand anyway.
That was my question as well. Is that $7,000, is that set longevity, or is your part-time number in place? Because we've seen that happen a couple of times.
For which one? Sorry.
Your regular earnings on page 62. You're up, the amount you're up is right around it's almost your part-time number. We've seen that double in other departments. Yeah, so the part-time.
I'm not sure, I'll have to check on that one, that's in there twice. You talking about the overtime that was added twice?
No, yeah, the overtime, we've seen some department kind of, just taking in to get those lines doubled up.
I can dig into that.
I mean, it could literally reset the longevity, it could.
Actually, that might be what it is, but I'll double check that it's not the other one.
Any other questions on Bob?
The, airflow expenses are going up. You know, then they have dropped some and you got rid of Kingsbury. Airflow expenses going down some.
The revenue on the expense is down a little bit.
Yeah, we have more employees.
Yeah, there's an additional car, so we did lose a territory, but there's an additional car because we got an additional, fire inspector this year. So, that number may very well be under the 34,000. But if you see what we spent, 21,849 so far this year, it might be significantly under that, but I would rather.
I think the 21's only through July though, John.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, July 31st.
Okay. I'd rather have me be wrong on the high side on that one. And last year, we were discussing possibly having to raise it above the 34 anyway. You remember that, Al? We were trying to figure out if it would cover it, so I just left it the same.
And when Brian raises the rate, he wants to raise everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You picked up Cambridge too, right?
Yeah, we did pick up Cambridge.
Well, part of the drive to Cambridge is Cambridge.
Any other revenue questions for John?
Anybody else have their budget?
No, we'll do that now. Melissa, myself, John, Terry, we were working on a kind of a software package, to increase the efficiency, consistency of the department, and, but also, send monthly reports out to the supervisors on new projects that are, behind or any issues, and will also give us metrics where we can evaluate, the efficiency of each inspector in the department, so. Go ahead, John, and explain the.
All right, the software that we're looking at is called Municity 5. Price-wise, it's on the lower third of the range that had turned into us. I can give you all kinds of examples how it's going to increase our efficiency, our consistency. One example, fire inspections. They have it set up so that the program itself, it has workflows, so it can do work for you behind the scenes, and the results without having to dig through databases and everything yourself. So with fire inspections, we could set it up where, say, okay, this group of assembly buildings has to have an inspection in July. So say in May, we can have the system automatically print out letters for those saying your inspection's coming up. These are the things that we look at. These are the reports that we'll need, like if they have a fire extinguishing system, something like that. And please give us a call. So it's giving them that information ahead of time, so it's not when we're showing up at their doorstep, they realize, oh, I didn't know I had to have that at this point, and then we have to go back again. And it's asking them to call us instead of us reaching out to them 3, 4, 5 times to set stuff up. Another one are CO searches, certificate of occupancy searches. Somebody's selling their house, the buyer's lawyer wants to know if there's any open permits. Right now, we have to look through 5 or 6 databases, find out that information, if there's open permits, closed permits, fire inspections, property maintenance things. This, you type in the number of the address or the tax map number, it gives you everything right there. And once we have everything electronic as far as, starting 2022 or whatever moving forward, we just print off copies of it right from there. We don't have to go pull the file, bring it back, make copies, do scans, whichever like that. Save major time with that. Property maintenance, we'll be able to do more of those more efficiently. If we're out and we see this person's building something and they don't have a permit, or we're not sure, we can actually look it up while we're out in the field. If they don't, we can actually input the information, have a letter printed back at the office, notify Dawn that it's printed. She can put it in the mail all while we're out. So, all kinds of ways to increase that. It's going to increase our consistency because we'll have like one letter for this topic, renewals. We'll have one letter for this, one for that, instead of each inspector having tweaked their own over the years. So it'll be standard. And then the inspections themselves, software lets us do checklists. So when we go out and we're looking at a foundation, we're all looking at the same stuff. We're not missing something. This person isn't looking for this. That person isn't. It's all going to be very consistent. Metrics, I haven't even gotten into all the details that we can check with that. I've been told by the software company that there's all kinds of options that they basically would have to figure it out once we get into the system, our system, figure out how to set it all up. But say, how long does it take on average for a new home permit to be approved in Hebron? Get that, we can gauge that, then we can use that as a metric, or as a metric for that. We'll look at it later on, say, okay, well, we're a little bit behind on this. What do we need to do to tweak that, to get it back to where it should be? What tools do you need? What training is needed to get it back to where it should be? There's all kinds of different things that we can do with this. So, yes, sir.
So, is there a mechanism like where you oversee the whole thing? So like,
Yes.
when something's done and somebody adds something in it, they can't take it back off unless it should come back off, or
Right.
they can't add something that there's nothing behind,
Yes, there's all kinds of
safeguards.
parameters that you can put on it, permissions you can put on it, and anything that is changed, the system keeps a record of who changed it. So even if something was changed later, I could go back 6 months later and say, well,
Find
this
the information
moved to
that
this,
goes with it.
this person changed it.
And that is paid for out of IT's fund, right? So that's already, is it already purchased?
No,
Terry's gonna bring it up to the
That's
IT.
coming to your next meeting. But is it something we have to fund in the budget, because it's already in this year, she's got money now to do that, right?
no. No money has been appropriated yet for it,
That's
to my
what it's
knowledge.
presented to me, is what I asked.
But maybe. Terry, I think, might be on here, and I'll have something she can jump in with.
I'm not sure if she's on, but yes, Terry's.
Hi there.
Oh, you are here, okay.
I am here. From a funding standpoint, I know we've talked about it a bit. We don't have anything specifically allocated. We were going to be applying for the waiver in IT committee tomorrow and then discussing the best way to fund it. But we were talking about funding it this year. I know when I spoke to you about it, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you.
Al?
So are we locked into this product? Because I wasn't aware that you were looking for one, and our New World system that we already own has a code enforcement building permit module that if you wanted to look at it, we're having a demo on November 8th already for the contract module, and I'm sure they would be willing to expand that to show us what it does.
IT had reached out to them about that. We didn't hear back from them, and from what I've heard, that wouldn't, there's better options.
Okay, I didn't know if you knew that it was something that
Maybe it was more accounting than field work.
no, there was a whole building permit module that they presented to us.
Yeah, we did explore multiple different options that are out there. Companies, we also explored what other counties and municipalities were currently using, demoed a bunch of different options, and this just really seemed to be a great option from a technology standpoint. Obviously, John can speak more to his functionality, but technology-wise, it's really a great system that they can grow into as well.
I'm really excited about it. I can't share it enough, that I'm really looking forward to possibly getting this implemented as soon as possible. Would be fantastic. Part of the price on it too would be getting tablets. there is a reoccurring cost each year, which we'll have to actually, modify the budget once it's approved, if it's approved.
It's in the budget for next year already. It's in my budget.
Oh, that's right, yeah, it'd be your budget. Thank
And that was so you could take pictures and everything, and upload them right there.
Yeah, you can take
Or we can
pictures,
go back.
you can fill out the reports, everything right there, you can email it to whoever, right then and there.
The other thing the system does is, if there's a delay, you send out a response and want something from a contractor,
Yeah.
and there's a delay, the system will generate, this hasn't been answered.
Yep.
So it doesn't get lost down the line,
Lost in the shuffle.
whatever follow-up, timeframe we set on it. So, and, in the future, we're hoping to be able, from the public to apply.
Yeah,
Do certain things online rather than have come in.
yeah, there is a portal that can be used on the, like contractors or homeowners or whichever can use the portal to, in the future, fill out applications, requests.
So with that, will you have the opportunity to send that to supervisors that have to sign off? So like when they fill out the information, it comes to you, you send it to me.
Yep.
I sign off, send it back, so it just keeps moving?
Yep.
That'd be nice.
And the other nice thing, like I said, it will generate a monthly report on all the activity in your town that he can send out, what's pending, what's done. I think that's important.
Yeah, let me see what that's in Greenwich.
Not you. I'll let that alone. I'll let you.
That's where that permission comes in.
Well, he's the assistant code guy.
He just complains too much.
So does this track work orders by town or by zip code?
Pardon me, sorry.
Does it track the, code enforcement activities by town or by zip code? That mean by town?
We could text the reporting software that's included with this, we could do it however we wanna do it.
We gotta do it by town. Yeah, because I got a bunch of zip codes. I
would think you do it by parcel number, that way, there's no.
Right, no, right, that'd be ideal.
The way that our office currently works is it's all based on towns and villages, which is what we would continue to do in our own opinion, but, we could do custom reports to find out specifics.
Any other questions about the software? Anybody?
John?
Bill?
John, I think you answered one of the questions. I wasn't sure if, it was gonna be done by tax map number within towns. And also, will you load up past, so if you've got 4 property owners, will that follow the land or will it follow property owners? Or will it do both?
It would follow, it'd be all based on the tax map numbers, yes.
Yeah. So if
And
it,
the
if the
initial
property
cost,
sold,
sorry, go ahead.
if the property is sold 4 times, it could actually backtrack to past property owners?
That's already handled, I believe, through like, ImageMate maybe, but it would follow that property. So if you had 4 different owners, it would show all of the permits, whatever any of them had for permits, any of those 4 owners, so.
And the other question is, who's gonna load up all this history?
That's all taken care of, between IT and the company itself. That's all why the first year costs more. It's just to get it all set up. It will bring in all of our past information. There won't be like electronic copies of COs and all of that. We'd have to scan those to put them in, which is a completely other topic. But from this point forward, everything would be, electronic.
So when you start up and push go, you're gonna have all back history. Excellent. Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Want to talk about the personnel for?
Yes. Steve is going to be retiring in April. He is one of our building inspectors. He's going to be retiring in April. What I was requesting today to move forward is to be able to add another position. So it would be adding another inspector so that we could hire him or her in January and have that 4 months overlap so that they could go through their certification if they don't have it, go through their certification and their shadowing, so that when he leaves, we would drop his position, but this person would be ready to jump right in and move on. So there would be an overlap that would involve a new position, but it would be a short-term new position. Get rid of the other full-time one. So that's one of them. Second one, the departmental assistant, she's currently ranked as an accounts clerk. Work that she does, that was set up before we had, figured out all the ins and outs, what she would be doing. The work that she is doing really warrants a senior account clerk. So I would like to increase or change that, however that works for personnel there. Reclassify her as a senior account clerk.
And that's all for 22.
That would be 2022.
Any other questions for John? Hey, John, thank you.
Just a reminder to speak up or speak into your mask, into your mic.
We are speaking into the mask, that's the problem.
Next up, probation, Dan Boucher, I see you're on there, Dan. And,
I guess start with revenue.
start with page 9. Any changes there, Dan?
We're pretty lucky. We're pretty lucky with the revenue this year. We were anticipating some reductions last year when we were looking forward, but we've been told that we're going to hold firm at $130,000 on our major funding stream, our probation block grant that we receive every year. We have two main funding streams: probation block grant, and then just a small amount of rent that comes in from an agreement that Anthony made with the New York State Parole Office. And that's about $9,000 a year, which brings us to that $139,000 number under the state aid section. The other portion of the revenue that we anticipated at $6,200 is surcharge from restitution, which fluctuates every year. It's definitely just an estimate. We've seen good years where we pushed up almost to 10,000 in revenue, but other years where it's been down in the fives. It depends how much restitution is ordered by the court and how much restitution is collected by our department, so it does move. The $200 that we have down is just an estimate based on current custody investigations. Years past, probably 10 years ago, we saw a very significant number of custody and visitation investigations being conducted by our department. Some of those would be fee-based, depending on income. Other ones were waived based on the individual's income level. Right now, our number with the current judge, and I've discussed this with him in the past and how they're ordered. This current judge that we have in family court doesn't order as many custody investigations as the past judge. So we do have a less of a burden there, but we also see a high percentage of the individuals that we're doing custody investigations on actually not qualifying because of income, so we're not actually charging them any money. So we look at that as a revenue stream that's almost non-existent at this point. We do have two areas of money that come in, and they're always changing, so we didn't put them in there this year. Inmate pre-sentence investigations, we can conduct those on inmates that commit crimes while they're incarcerated in a state correctional facility. In past years, we've had revenue as high as $5,000. Last year, the number was $1,400, and it does fluctuate from year to year. There is absolutely no way for us to anticipate a number there. We could have $1,400 like we did last year, or it could fluctuate anywhere up to around $5,000. We've kind of held back from putting that number in there because it matters on what's ordered from the court, what's being charged. Last year with COVID, it was a very difficult year. This year, we've had very few, but there were a lot of things at play there with arrests in facilities. The prisons were actually shut down for a period of time. You had less visitors. Department of Corrections weren't bringing some people to court due to COVID issues, so the transportation was happening. Now I'm anticipating that to come back, so hopefully that revenue stream will come in a little bit more normal state. We'll see. Ignition Interlock is another funding stream that we've received. Last year we got about $5,500 in revenue, and this year we're looking to do the same thing. And once again, the reason that number wasn't put in there, it's a conservative estimate, because that number can change if all of a sudden we're receiving less cases that are sentenced to be supervised under ignition interlock monitoring. That number could drop considerably. So we tried to take the most conservative approach we could, and this is where we came out with our number, like we have in the past.
Any questions about revenue? Dan?
Don?
Go ahead, Dana.
Dan, in the budget, I would like to see if it's kind of a crapshoot what the revenue is going to be, because it changes so much, that you do like a 5-year average and
Okay.
bring that number forward in the budget, because at least it's something,
Okay.
rather than saying, nothing, because I think you could get a 5-year average, up and down.
I can also, we have a pretty good historical record too that we keep, that we can provide to when we do that. That way, if anybody wants to look at the historical record of our revenue from the state, we can look at it, and it changes from year to year. Like, we used to receive a significant amount of money for sex offender supervision, and then they took that away 100% and rolled it into the block grant. So we can definitely do what you're saying. And I think that would be pretty easy for us to do, Dana.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. On to expenses. 54 and 55.
All right, our expenses, you'll see a drop in the personnel line, and that's due to a retirement of our director, who had a little bit different salary than the incoming employee will. So just the breakage on a changing of the guard created a little difference in the personnel line, you'll see. But if you look at the individual expense lines, those have stayed very consistent. And by going through those, the two areas that I see is some fluctuation. Ammunition prices are changing all the time. The problem with buying state contracts, sometimes you get some consistency in purchasing with the state contract, but you might not get any ammo. So right now, if you're trying to buy ammunition on state contract, vendors such as one that, like the Sheriff's Department, a lot of local PDs use, might tell you that you're going to wait a year or 14 months for your order of ammunition. And that's not something that you used to see all the time. So right now you have huge wait times in ammunition purchases and some fluctuation in prices. If you try to go out and buy some ammunition locally, just to maybe have some person trained who's a new employee, you want to buy just maybe like 1,000 rounds, you could be paying for non-duty ammo, just normal training ammo, you could be paying at least double what you would pay on state contract if you just wanted to go out and buy some boxes from a local vendor. And I got to tell you, in the past, when we've been in a pinch, our local sporting goods shops and gun shops have been very, very good about trying to get us the best prices possible. We've been very happy with them. They've done great and been aligned with state contract most of the time. But right now, the climate that's happening right now, whatever's going on in the country, the ammo prices are a little off. So that's something we're seeing right this second. I don't see any huge need for any increase in budget lines other than that, and we didn't really put too much in to change that. If there's anything that anybody sees they have any questions on with the expense line, I would love to talk about it.
Don? Ever?
Dana?
Dan, you bring up an interesting point, because I've always asked Anthony, I don't think you're spending enough on bullets. But you mentioned
We have it in 2 lines. That's why I'm sorry.
But you
So that-
mentioned non-duty. Is that underneath education?
It's in our training line. So our training line is where we put our non-duty ammo. We usually don't buy a lot of hollow point ammo for training purposes because it's more reasonable. So what's in our training line, we do have ammo in there. So our ammunition, the reason we broke this out is so we would budget specifically to buy new duty ammo, to cycle ammo. I don't think it has to be broken out like that. I think we could probably put all the rest in there. But for training, we have a couple different things. We have our annual recertification and then new officer training. And that's kind of rolled into the same line. If the board would like all ammo, training and duty ammo to be put into ammunition, we can do that. But that's why Anthony probably should have explained it that way. The ammunition line is only duty ammo. That's why it's such a small amount.
Okay, I never knew that because I always question, how can you be proficient at only $300 a year when I can't buy hardly any ammo for that?
It's a very good question.
I think that's a good idea. It's easier to see, and it doesn't make much difference.
Okay.
And you have any spare bullets if you can't get a delivery?
We have some, yeah. We always try to keep a small amount. I got to tell you, if we had another employee leave, we'd be really hurting pretty bad right now, because the new employees have to shoot a lot of ammo at their initial training because they go through more extensive training than your annual recertification. But it just like any other agency, if you lose a lot of people, you're hurting for ammo immediately. Your annual certification, you can kind of limp along with a small amount in your reserves, but it's something you have to plan for ahead of time. You don't want to stock too much up, but it's something you have to definitely plan for. One thing that I think our department needs, and I would like to address this maybe at next meeting of public safety, is that our need for radios. Portable radios are something that our officers should be holding on to. We actually only have 2 for our entire department that are assigned to the officers. These should be, every officer should have their own radio. And if we decided to do half the department, I at least could handle normal functions that way. We've been pushing the envelope a little bit on this, and it was something that we started years ago, and it was never addressed. Something I would like to address. We actually have money left in our personnel line this year because we did not hire a PO, a backfill PO for most of the year because we were waiting on a civil service exam. It's something that I'm going to bring up at next meeting. I discussed this with Tim Hardy about the price of radios for officers. So I'm going to be bringing a request to do a budget amendment at next meeting. And that's something that I think is very appropriate for our department, and whether the board would like to spend it out of the existing budget or not is up to you, but I'd like to present that next meeting just to give you guys a heads up.
So Dan, you have 6 that go out would need radios? 6
Well,
officers?
and to anticipate any normal functioning, that's kind of how it could happen. You have to go out on a team of 2 unless you go with a police officer yourself. We don't let officers go out by themselves on home visits or field visits. So each officer should have a radio on them. They should be sharing a radio. I think that's the most appropriate. I think at minimum, it would be 6 to outfit the entire department with their own radios assigned to them. We would need to buy 11. That would include myself in case there was an issue, or if I wanted to monitor my staff in the field to make sure they were acting appropriately. That's how that would function, is 11 radios at probably $1,000 a piece, but that's something, obviously we could do a different model where half the office had them and they shared them, because on a normal day, I don't have my entire office in the field. That would be horrible for functioning. But I think we have options of discussing how our office should be outfitted with the equipment. In different places handle it differently also. So I think we can discuss that if you want at next meeting.
But the share radio can be dangerous, especially if they get separated.
I agree.
Front of the back, one radio doesn't work, so I think it's a safety issue. We can talk about the next public safety meeting.
Are there recurring costs with that, Dan?
Just if they get outdated, there would be a cost to replace, but we've already worked with public safety to replace them in the past. We started out with a very, very inexpensive radio that was about $250. We've already been very or benefited from the generosity of public safety in helping us get our other replacement radios. So I don't know what the useful life of these radios are. Was that Brian that asked? If I could speak to public safety a little bit more about how many years we're going to get out of them, then yes, you're right. We would have to replace that on a schedule of some kind.
Dana?
Dan, can you give me an example of what a subcontractor is? You have $6,800 for subcontractor?
Subcontractor fees are drug testing fees and polygraphs. We have sex offenders that have to participate in polygraphs periodically on a rotating schedule. So a subcontractor fee could be, we actually ask the client to pay for that as part of their court order. It's something that's negotiated in court. If they cannot pay for it and it's realistic that they can't pay for it, the county will pick that up under that budget line. We do our best to make the client pay for that responsibility because part of our other functioning is to try to get every single one of our people employed. So they kind of go hand in hand. We try not to have too much in that line, but because of the cost of polygraphs and drug testing, say you do an ETG lab test where somebody disputes that they were using alcohol, we send it out to the lab, and that costs $30 per test. That's something that would be charged. That's kind of how that works. In the past, we've pressed people pretty hard about paying some of these fees. If they're disputing the rapid tests we're using in the office, it depends on the client. If you have somebody that's indigent, you don't press it. But if you know somebody can afford it and they disagree with their positive test and they want it to be sent to the lab, then maybe we'll be asking them to pay for that test. So you take it on a case-by-case basis, but that's what that line is.
Okay. Brian, I have a question for you, the way the budget is broken out. If you look at the budget, a lot of times the subline 4280, no matter what department, is huge because that's supplies and other. And in this department, 4280 is ammunition. But, you know, Dan has pistols, body armor, ankle monitors, and is all that office supply? I would think an office supply is a copy machine, paper. Where are those things located? Should they be a 4280.01 or something?
They're already different categories. That's what I think, they're already spread in there somewhere. There are different extensions already.
But there's not very much money in office supplies, 3,600. How can you buy the field supplies out of that?
It's probably ours, are they, Dan?
I couldn't hear Brian.
I don't think they are bought out of office supplies, are they, your field armor or anything?
No, that's, field office supplies is your copy paper, your toner, your pens.
So where are the expenses of the field supplies?
Do you mean like holsters and equipment like that?
Well, if you need a new pistol, one is malfunctioning, worn out, or body armor or vest, things that the holster supplies. I don't think that would be office supplies, but I don't see a line in your budget that would explain those expenses.
So our body armor is, we did through a state grant, and we worked out a deal with the treasurer's office to have that combined purchase with the sheriff's department because our money was coming into one place, checks were being cut out. That was something that was done through committee with that when we received the grant. So that was something that happened a couple of years ago with body armor, and that's about a 5-year cycle. So you don't pay for that every year. That's something that would be zeroed out every year. And if a weapon, say you have a weapon that needs to be purchased, that would probably be, I guess, a special line or an equipment line that money would go into. We don't currently have one because we haven't had an equipment request that was sizable in nature to come to the committee to actually ask for. So in the past, I can tell you, Dana, we have had other budget lines that don't currently exist under this because we used to have recurring costs in those budget lines. Right now, we just don't have any costs in those that we're adding up. So I guess if I have to buy a new holster for a pepper spray container for an officer, which I do have to buy here soon, so it broke, that technically could be bought under supplies because it's such a low dollar amount. So technically, the treasurer's office would allow us to do that. And it is very inexpensive. You could get one for under $20 because it's really just a nylon holster. So that's kind of how our purchases go. They're usually pretty low dollar amounts and they fit into some other lines.
Okay, I just was concerned that you were not putting in enough expenses, but thank you.
That may be the case, but we try not to have too many.
And with the body armor, they have a 5-year lifespan.
Yep.
Do you normally get a grant every 5 years, or if you don't, what's the plan for saving up for replacement?
That's the plan is we will apply for it again with the sheriff's department. We worked with Tony Leclerc last time to apply at the same time that they applied. Actually, it was the first time I'd handled the grant myself, so I worked very closely with Tony to actually do it. So I plan on doing it again when the cycle comes up this next time. I think if the feds are going to offer the money, we're going to try to take every dollar they give us to replace them.
And if they don't, then we have an issue.
I agree. I think every local PD does this.
5 years.
Yeah, expiration date is they don't work so long for me, they've been sitting in the closet for 5 years. They don't have a bullet after 5 years?
No, they will, but the manufacturer and the recommendation is 5 years, and because some can if you leave it in the trunk.
It's a liability, because their lawyer said you better put an expiration date on them in case somebody gets shot after 10, but real estate is not like milk where they expire after 5 years, is it?
No, but there's been cases where they have been issues that, they've been stored in the trunk or different things happen, but, that's the recommendation that, goes to. But everyone replaces every 5. Al?
Dan, on your .1 line, I hate to ask the question because it went the right direction. It's down 18,000, but with the normal steps and longevities that you would have had, it's probably closer to down 25 or 26,000. You mentioned the director's salary, but there's got to be more than that.
Right now, I don't see much more than that. Do you mean in what we're using in 2021 out of our estimated, or our department requested for 2022?
Budget to budget, I think it was down 18, right?
Yeah.
Which means if you had put the normal steps and longevity in, you're actually down 25 or 26. That's a significant decrease.
Correct.
So it's going to be more than the director's salary.
Well, no, that's actually all we have, because the director's salary would have also gone up.
But you think that your .1s are down 26,000 year over year?
You're just saying from 21 to 22, the starting, the difference between.
20. Yep.
Yeah, that's how we have the list of our salaries that we got from your department, and I'm pretty sure we have that right. So we have an 848 number that we received from the treasurer's office with the backfill of a trainee for part of the year and a PO for the prior year. That's the number we got from your office, not counting the.
It actually comes from admin, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. But that's the number we received to go with. So I don't see. Wait, say that one more time.
You're adopted 21 with 867. You're looking for 849. I just don't want to run up short on you.
Neither do I. maybe we can have this, maybe we can have this conversation after, because I have the individuals, officers I'm looking at right here, or employees I'm looking at, and I don't see what we're missing, but I think we need to have that conversation then, if you think we're short a little.
And Dan, we can look at it again, but I also have it up in front of me. And it looks correct to me as well. I think you do have some vacancies, and that could be why.
Melissa, do you know if there was extra money budgeted in 21 for the overlap? Did they expect some shadow when the old director was leaving and the new director training, or was there anything put in special for just 21?
Not that I recall.
Okay.
Good, any other questions? Sue?
Dan, I'm gonna go back to what Dana was talking about. Just out of curiosity, like with the guns, with the holsters, other tools that are needed for the job. I feel like if it's in the budget, it kind of creates an inventory. And I feel like not being in the budget, it's like, they're there, but you don't know where they are, and you don't know how many you have, and it's kind of like it's not very transparent.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know how you keep track of inventory from year to year.
Well, because we're such a small department, we don't really have a lot of this. I know we're talking about a lot of equipment, but counting myself, we have 13 officers. There's actually very little of what we're talking about for equipment, but we definitely can have these budget lines. They're going to be zeroed out every year, or they're going to have like $40 in them. You know what I mean? I think that it's going to be such a nominal amount. I think that's the reason why some of these things were there, and the cost, like I said before, sometimes the costs are so low, it's not technically an equipment purchase the way some of the policies work. And like you guys know, the purchasing policies at the county they're confusing. So the way things have to meet standards of a certain dollar amount to actually be called maybe an equipment or equipment line purchase compared to another type of purchase, sometimes that dictates where I'm putting my costs. And sometimes these costs are, instead of 4 holsters or 7 holsters, I anticipate having to buy 0 holsters, so am I going to put maybe 1 in there for the budget every single year just to hold the line? I definitely can do that. That doesn't bother me a bit. It probably would bulk up my budget by a couple dollars just to have it sitting there in case of, like a rainy day fund. I think part of what our department's always done is we tightened it up maybe more than we needed to. Since I've been here, I've noticed that Joe McMurray and Anthony both did that. And I know that I've heard some opinions both ways that we probably should be budgeting for the what if situations. I know that they've kind of tried to not do that because they don't want to put things in the budget they're not going to spend. I don't mind.
I guess what I'm thinking is the ammunition needs to go into something, and it's probably not a holster.
Well,
Okay.
that I completely understand. Yeah.
Thank
If
you.
the board wanted to, Dan, we could basically add like a uniforms line, and that way anything regarding the uniform, be it a holster, a windbreaker, a bow, you could have a uniforms line that kind of covers soup to nuts what their normal uniform, and then maybe that would help the board with what their question is.
That would help me out quite a bit too. If we ever needed to put something in a line, it would give a place for it instead of never knowing where to put it. Yeah, that'd be great.
That's pretty easy, actually, Brian, if you want to, pursue that.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to Sue is there's no way inventory could be tracked through the budget, so. It's an interesting thought, but there's no way, we have a staffing pattern separate for staffing, but inventory has to be separate too, there's just no way to put that in the budget.
Brian, I'm just kind of thinking like we do like computers and human resources. You have to do it just for replacement down the road. And this
Yeah.
way it allows for, you're talking about 5-year recovery, you're talking about, well, there's only 13. But by the time you do that and you're looking at replacement down the road, 5 years from now, 10 years, you've got your template all figured out.
I like the plan where he works with the sheriff and gets a grant.
Amen.
Any other questions for Dan?
The only thing that I think we didn't mention was the IT budget has included the case management system that we've been talking about for quite some time. And the Caseload Explorer program we've discussed over the years as an option. And that's something that Terry has in her budget. I know she'll probably discuss at her presentation with her committee. But if you guys have any questions about that, I can answer it now too. But I know we've discussed it in the past and most people are kind of well-versed in the program we don't have, the one that we're the only one in the state that doesn't for case management. But that's something that Terry's going to present in her budget.
Well, don't do it, right? My only comment is this. When we don't take advantage of grant opportunities until the money's gone, we end up paying. This is one that's been going on a long time that we didn't get, and we just had another one we lost. So it wasn't in your department's office.
Anything else for Dan? Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Sign council.
I expect it was taking a approach for that. Good afternoon. For those of you that haven't met, Tom Shaw, the supervising attorney for the assigned council office. This year, our budget, again, is pretty much substantially the same as last year. Big numbers we request from the county are $168,000 for criminal court cases and $250,000 for family court cases. A large portion of our budget is funded through ILS. This year, with COVID, we're down on a lot of different lines. We have $10,000 a year we ask for family court expenses, so like investigators, things like that. To date, we've spent $341. Family court cases, we request again $250,000 from the county. To date, we've only spent $111,000. We're good on that. Appeals, we request $55,000 from the county. We're down to 39, and the only reason we were up last year is we had a very difficult litigant in family court case that took us to the, what we're talking about, took us to the appellate division many times, and his case is aged out, his child's aged out, so we're good with that. The reason our family court case is down is that everything was virtual, so we didn't have to pay for travel time, mileage, and that kind of thing. So, other than that, I think we're actually in pretty good shape. And one more thing, I guess, we anticipate getting the same amount of money from ILS in 2022 that we received in 2021.
So my question on that though is like when your cases are down or things are down, do you still get all that money or you only get whatever you can put against it?
We still get all that money, and we try to use all that money.
Every dollar that was put to salary, people still get. Any mentor training, stuff like that might suffer a little bit.
That's where net cost suffers. You look at it and you think, oh, you're good, but if you weren't able to use it all, it doesn't offset it, but in this case it does. That's all I want to think.
The only time that he might run up a little bit short is like on the mentoring, on the training, on the education. Right. The salary piece is gonna be a salary piece. You're guaranteed that.
And they come up here, and if I'm not spending the money, if they don't like that.
Right.
Spending the money. And as far as the criminal cases go, we have a pool of $124,000 in capital money and $105,000 if we go over in criminal. So none of that comes out of the county money. But unfortunately, I can't reduce the county share because the money I'm receiving is premised on that money. Right. So this year, $168,000 for criminal cases has been steady for probably 4 or 5 years.
So if we weren't in COVID, things would be a lot more going on, but
we'd be spending more money. We're not spending travel,
right.
We're not paying people for travel time or mileage now.
What effect would the bail reform have in your office, money-wise, if COVID wasn't satisfied with us down in Albany. That's good. The money's still gonna be there for a year. I couldn't believe it, I know that. I worked at the Senate for 25 years, I get it. We might have to send you back. Help us out.
Al?
Sam, I don't know if this is a question for you or Mike. I know you can't budget for it, but do you have any kind of crystal ball on what some of the moving parts on the ILS change in the family court might have an impact on your budget?
I'm not sure, if anything, I think it's gonna be positive, because I think if they are gonna request changes, we'll probably see money along the same lines as the criminal case.
So that means the young man over there won't.
Right. And your side,
Yeah, okay.
no, he probably won't, but. And hopefully whatever they want us to do, they'll fund. What they really want us to do is follow the same model in the criminal courts, case families that we're doing in the family. They want us to get out there with investigators, get out there with experts, you know, spend a lot of time involved in the case. And we're doing that now with the criminal cases, and we're actually getting pretty good results. I don't know, he may disagree with me over there, but.
But I mean, from what I've read, I mean, it feels like a here we grow again moment.
Yeah, that's the idea. But the good thing is, like with the criminal stuff, when we go over the county's numbers, they pay for it. So if that happens with family court, we'll be good.
On your side.
Yeah, my side,
There's
yeah.
another side is the problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Don? Don?
Dana?
If you refer to page 26, the expenses, and top of 27, I see like 5 or 6 lines that I think are overfunded by a lot. Maintenance contract on page 26, maintenance contract, 5,500, but we only spend hundreds of dollars.
Right, but I think part of that is, the reason for that is we budgeted for it, and then now, isn't that coming out of IT, that's for our computers? I think that's what that's about.
All right, what about outside services? It's budgeted 10,000, but we only spend, 21
Right.
actual, 341, and
Right, that's what, I talked about that, that's the family court, like investigators, expenses and things like that, but because the family court was shut down for so long.
That number will go back into
That
play.
number will go back up next year.
is
Yeah.
that the same thought behind the overload cases? That number's gonna go up?
Yeah,
Because
well,
overload,
as far as the county share on the criminal cases, it's $168,000. Okay, we've got $124,000 we get from ILS for CAF overload, and then we've got a reserve amount that we get also from ILS for $105,000. So that $168,000 number, that's where you're at with the county. We'll never go over that.
Dana, the overload number comes from the grant, not based on history.
oh,
The maintenance comes
Okay.
from,
Go ahead, Dana.
all right, well, what about outside grants, outside services? 50,000 budgeted, we only spent about,
That's the line item in the grant.
right, that's ILS money.
and grants mentoring is also ILS money?
Yes, all the, ones down, the 05, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
If you go back to page 2, back on page 2, each of those lines has a corresponding revenue that offsets them. It's a net zero to the county on those.
Okay,
But the maintenance contract, that's not the case, that's not paid by,
That probably can come out, I think that's in Terry's budget.
well, yeah, it's in Terry's, but is it here because I just wanna make sure one of the caseloads doesn't pay us for it.
Not that one.
No. So we gotta check that and see if that's in Terry's? Yes.
Because if it's maintenance on his copier, it's his. If it's maintenance on a computer, it's
We've
his.
got an actual 260, so it could be greatly reduced.
Unless it's something that comes once a year anyway.
Right.
If it's his copier contract, like I have a copier contract that comes due in November.
But you're thinking that's under Terry's maintenance?
No, if it's copier, it's his.
Okay, so that's,
Yep.
So Al, what you're saying is because we get so much revenue, we need to pump up the expense.
Well, no, they're related. So if he's getting $168,000 in revenue, there's $168,000 in corresponding expenses. They match up 1-to-1.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
So
They're not-
but we pump up the expense to match the revenue.
No, we have to budget the grant that way. It's the only way to budget a grant.
Yeah, but I don't think we pump it up, Dana. I think we still have our own money in there too.
He could spend up to that amount.
Yeah. Well, they, ILS wants, I have to spend $68,000 first. Part of the before I can get into the other money.
If you reduce that expense, you would have to reduce the revenue that offsets it too.
Well, I know it balances, but if we get so much revenue, we're putting in here lines, 10,000 in expense, and we spend $500 in expense.
We don't get the 10,000 from ILS, but that's family court money, that's not criminal. We only get criminal court money, criminal case money from ILS, the family court is 10,000.
Okay.
So, just for a little history, Dana, since we're all here. Back 10 years ago, we went through all this and wanted to have an assigned counsel office, and there was no way to fund it, no way to get there. And when we went through Harrell Herring and through all this caseload stuff, this kind of gave us all the money to do it because we were part of the ones that got sued. And so that's how we got here. It was something that was unnecessary evil that we had to do anyway. This just enhanced it, made it happen sooner, and now they throw so much money at us. And we aren't allowed to quit because of the lawsuit. We're going to have to keep going until the state quits putting in money. If the state quits putting in money, we can stop, but we don't foresee that happening because then they'd need another lawsuit, and they don't want to go there. Right. And if you backed up and we didn't have the ILS money and the new changes from the legislature, there'd be a lot more money coming out of the county budget.
Yes, we probably don't.
Yeah, so in a sense, we lost what we won.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I see you there.
Yes, good afternoon. Revenues, I think revenue's accurate, except I'm not sure if there isn't one grant missing there that is neither a distribution nor a Harrell Herring piece. It's the other grant that pays $100,000 a year. So I think we might be 100,000 short on revenue there. It's listed on page 2.
Like I said, it's not listed on there.
I don't see it. But I can get that information and make sure we amend it.
Sounds good. What do you think we're missing 100,000 in revenue, Mike?
Yep.
I do. There's that grant that is neither a distribution nor Harrell Herring. It is $100,000 annually for 300 total that we just renewed. So I know there's another 100,000 there for revenue.
But Mike, I think that grant was 19, 20, and 21.
No, just renewed, Al. I mean, I know it's still going.
Okay. They were gonna get it, I didn't think it had passed the Albany folks yet.
I'll double check, okay, but I'm pretty sure we just signed a contract on it over the summer sometime.
Remember the contracts were going retro back.
That may be, but there still was some forward, meaning I think still 2 years forward,
Okay,
but I'll double check it.
thanks.
The entire
other
budget is pretty flat on both the revenue and the expense side. Except I would want to say this up front. We are currently working on the renewal of 2 contracts, that being the caseload contract and the CAFA contract. And this could tie into what Supervisor Half was addressing as far as these large budget amounts that we're not spending. As we renew these contracts, I want to make it clear, we can only these amounts are budgeted and allocated, but if we don't spend it, we can't claim it. So what we're trying to do in the renewals of the contracts is make sure that the money's allocated to places that we can in fact spend it. So that's, if, it's not like they just give the money to us, they allocate it to us. If we don't spend it, Al can't submit claims and we don't actually get it. And consequently, ILS is basically covering all of these additional steps and expenses that we take that we weren't taking before Harrell Herring.
Mike, you're up 100,000 in revenue over last year anyway. So where is, because it's on the last line on page 1, says state aid into defense, and last year you thought I put it in. What's that? I thought I put it in. Did you? Okay. But there was none for last year. No, there wasn't, because it wasn't awarded. So
There might have been a gap in there. Yeah.
So I think the 100, Mike, the 100 you're looking for is on page 1.
That's what I'm asking, it's just 100.
Yes. I thought I put it in.
Yep. Okay. I
Okay.
apologize.
So,
I thought, to Mike's point, I think there was one more year left on that.
but now they renewed it.
Well, this renewal is through last.
Yeah, and I think anything that they funded to start, it seems pretty clear they're going to continue to fund.
And I think even, I think even this one you'll see.
Just continue because it's funding salary for positions.
Right.
So will that show up on our actual for this year, even though it's
Yes. Yes, there will be claims in
all
this.
good news?
Actually, you'll see more than the 100 this year because we're grabbing some of the back stuff as well.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mike? Dana?
Mike, your ILS explanation about if you don't spend it, you don't get it. I have a few lines I want to ask you about if that's the case in these lines. Bottom of page 24, office supplies other, budgeting 8,000, which is double last year. And you didn't even spend 4,000 last year. Why is that at 8,000?
I'll have to get an exact answer on that, Supervisor Half. I believe there are additional expenses this year that we are anticipating would be paid on that line.
Would that be that ILS revenue that would offset?
No, frankly, I think that's more related to expenses that office supply expenses that we anticipate increasing.
Okay, now I'm going to page 25. Education, training, staff, budgeted 15,000. You don't even spend 2,000.
That's right.
Why is that so budgeted so high?
Well, it's budgeted that way because that again, it's part of a contract with ILS through one of the Harrell Herring pieces. And I think again, why it's there is they wanted to do much more travel. They wanted to do much more education and programs that we just weren't able to do with COVID. So that line anticipates travel expenses and a lot more training and education than we were able to do during the pandemic. And the other thing is we were able to do a lot of training during the pandemic, but it turns out that we were able to do it without any expense because there were these organizations offering a lot of free training during the pandemic that we were able to do virtually without any travel. So it anticipates a significant amount of travel and training that I don't think that line's budgeted too high if we're actually able to participate in what's anticipated.
All right, if you come down 3 lines, you have outside services,
Yes,
budgeting 25,000, which is probably 25 times more than what you
Yes.
actual expense? And can you explain that?
Yeah, those are for expert witnesses and investigations. Well, no, investigations is a different line. They are two different parts of Harrell Herring contracts. And they are expert services, outside services that we just haven't, with the reduction in caseload and the other changes to the criminal justice system as a part of COVID, we haven't had an opportunity to spend them.
All right, so that expenditure would be considered an up to 25,000, and then that would be offset by the ILS revenue up
That's
to
it.
25,000.
They're both up to 25,000 that we can claim reimbursement.
Is that the same explanation for the next line, miscellaneous?
It is.
Budgeting 25,000 and you've spent 317?
It is. But they're part of a contract, and we're renewing these contracts, and this is why, in the renewal process, we're trying to, if we can allocate any of this to salaries and money we know we're gonna spend, it's probably more prudent than allocating it to the speculative expenses.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Tony?
Try not to fog up. Good afternoon. I'd like it gone both ways. Do you want to start with questions, or you want me to walk through revenue and whatever changes there might be? Sounds good. So with revenue, state aid, offsetting part of the district attorney's salary continues to remain the same. We received notice that I forwarded to Al recently that will continue. We're fortunate we continue to receive, I skipped a line. So the DA crime grant, which is aid to prosecution, that is based on county size. That has remained flat for a number of years, but we continue to receive that, so that helps offset some of our expenses. Relative to victim services, we've been fortunate with the support we received from the state in that regard, and I update you all periodically with the efforts of our Victim Services Office, which is Herculean, to say the least, and they continue to do a great job on behalf of victims in Washington County, and provide an important conduit with the criminal justice system. The crimes against revenue, that helps fund or really offsets an expense of salary, but it allows us to be more proactive in assisting the county in terms of prosecuting appropriate offenses where people have obtained benefits from the county illegally. And so that's a cooperative effort between Department of Social Services, Sheriff's Department, and our office, where the DSS does a great deal of the investigation up front, and then once they've made a determination that they believe things have occurred that were improper or illegal, they'll meet with our office and the Sheriff's Department to determine whether or not criminal charges are appropriate. We've had very good success in terms of recovering illegally obtained funds, and as you all know, with the state, they like a return on their investment, which is ultimately how they measure. And so far, we've returned more than they've provided us. So I would assume that bodes well for continued receipt of that grant. Lastly, I think you'll see on line like 3389.11, that grant, for those that are on public safety may recall, the state offered a reimbursement grant to counties, and that was our share. We completed the necessary documents and paperwork, compiled all the appropriate support, and submitted it. They have yet to fund that, as far as I know, to the county, so it very well may come in
the end of this year or next year, but that's money that will come in. A portion of that was allocated to go to our local police departments because of their efforts to comply with the new discovery requirements. And the remaining will come into Washington County's general fund. Wish I could remember what that breakdown was, and I don't think I remember to bring that, but it's probably about 175,000 of the 193 will come to the county. And that we sort of divvied up between our office, Sheriff's Department, IT, and perhaps I think Public Safety, just to sort of account for the expenses in those departments to comply. It wasn't a reimbursement grant in the sense of they took what our expenses were and reimbursed them, but we had to show where we spent the money, which far exceeded what they provided to us. Unfortunately, in classic state fashion, it's a line item in the budget for 2021-22, but there isn't necessarily a revenue item that matches up. So we anticipate receiving something, but as I sit here today, I don't know what that will be come next year, beyond the 193,000.
So 175 is a one-time thing, or this is every year?
One time. So it gets written.
We have 193 amended for this year, so that's the same 175?
Yes, because I don't know when it's going to come in. I didn't know whether it was going to come in this year or next year. It just depends on when the state sends the money. They approved us. We were one of the first counties approved, but they still haven't paid it out. Is that right?
So you're about to break the budget up for part because that money's got to come out.
One way or the other?
No,
Is it out of this year's budget or next year?
Regardless of when we get the cash, it'll be in this year's budget.
Yeah.
It's recovering.
Right, because it doesn't matter the cash, this is the budget.
It's recovering costs that we already incurred.
That we've already.
But you incurred these a year ago or 2 years ago.
So they'll be recognized in 21.
Well, we already amended to recognize it this year.
That's right. I just don't know when we were going to get it. So
Okay, so
I'm a cash budget
what
guy.
we need is what that actual number is to subtract that from that 193, because it can't be in
193 is zero.
Right. The 2022 number, we have no idea what it will be.
Get back to your old self.
Well, it could be zero, except you got 90,000 already this year, and that hasn't come, so where did that come from? That's why I don't understand that.
That probably is money from victim services or CARP. I don't know.
But something that keeps coming, or?
Yes. The only number on here
That's why I don't know what the number is now.
Because the adopted 21 was zero.
Right, and he's got 90 in actual, and he said that comes every year.
The 193 is the one time, so the 193's got to come out, but if something else is in there.
Right, what's that number
Because
supposed to be?
there was also on the DA crime grant line, that 30,000, Tony, wasn't that the CARP number?
30,200 up above is the aid to prosecution. The CARP money is included in 3089, where it says Office of Victim Services and Crimes Against Revenue is where I put that.
That went down a little bit.
I put it in the wrong spot.
Now, the aid to prosecution, that's continuing though, isn't it?
Correct.
So that 30,000 can come in, that was zero.
You've got zero for next year, so that's gonna continue?
Oh, how did I miss that?
So that could be 30,000 to the good.
Yep, that's bad form on my part.
Not good when it's 193 to the bad.
But the 193, I think there was other things in there, Brian, because if you
Well,
look,
that's what I think, is there's more things, well, he said 175, so we need to find out what the number is.
if you look at 19 to 20, there was over $200,000.
Right, and there's 90,000 that's actually in this year.
No, but what happens with these numbers is it seems like we put grant numbers in different categories each year. Like the same grant seems to move based on whatever factors get played in, so I don't know why one year to see 202,000 is not, because we put it up above in other general government support, Office of Victim Services, and CARP. So I think that's part of the problem, is it seems like where that number gets put varies from year to year.
I think that 3389, Tony, is the OBS money. And historically,
What number?
because we've got 227 and 202, so my guess is that 3389.11, is it possible that's where the OBS money is going?
Except I put it in up above,
Put it in where?
in 30,089.
3089 is 172.
But it had 37 and 13 those same years.
Right, because you look down below, .11 had a lot more.
So let me look at those, Tony, so that we can match those up. If the budget's going in one line and the claim's going in a different line, let's get them
In
locked
yeah.
up. I can look at that for you, that's on my end.
Yeah, we just need to know what the actual was for, the 90,000, to see if that's reoccurring.
Because I think that the 202 belongs up a line at the 172. If you look at 19 to 20's actual,
Yep.
I think that belongs up with the 3089 account, the DA point.
Yep.
I think those 2 years of actual actually belong up a line. But the problem still remains, unfortunately, that the 193 has to come out.
Right, for 2022, correct.
And we just have to find out what that 90,098 is for, to see if it belongs up a line, down
If
the line.
it belongs up a line, it would be related to the 202.
Right, that's what we need to know.
That 3389 will be zero when we fix the OBS grant, because it appears like OBS budget and OBS claim are in 2 separate lines. I'd be willing to bet 98% of my life that that's OBS.
It only gives you 2% left, I guess it wouldn't have been high.
Well, I'll never go all in.
Anything more with, revenues?
So in any event, I have no idea what the revenue number will be in 2022. So what's the preference of the board, that we give our best educated guess or leave it zero and what comes in, comes in?
Normally, we would leave it zero until we knew if any funding was available.
Well, there is some, so essentially what happens, to give you a sense of the problem, they put this in the budget, and then its revenue source is to take money from the District Attorney of New York, the Manhattan County DA's office, out of a crime forfeiture fund that is his money. It's a discretionary fund that they then did away with the ability to add to it. So they've stripped all that money out, but the state hasn't put any into that budget item. So the question will be, how much was left in that particular forfeiture account? And then this year, in April, in the budget process, they added other recipients to it. So that further diluted what was going to, or eroded away what was going to be left to distribute to counties for offsetting discovery. So,
Zero might be right.
no, there will be something, but it won't be 193. It'll be more than, my guess is it'll be more than 30 or 40, but it won't be 193. So somewhere in that window, but I'll leave it at zero for our purposes. So if you're as confused by that as I am, then you're right along, you're understanding it perfectly.
Well, if you have an educated guess that you think 30 or 40 is really coming.
No, it might be more than that, I don't know.
Right, but I mean, even if that's the low end, we could add that if we know that it's coming.
No, it is New York, it's the state, and they're good at, until it arrives. So for instance, when did we submit our plan out? April? March?
Early this year, I want to say.
And here we sit in September, and the money's in the account. It's not one of those things where they're waiting for the federal government. They just haven't paid it out, so.
Well, they might.
That's the money on the 193.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
My fear is that, we want the next year to be something, Tony, but we just don't have any idea.
Correct, yep.
Okay. And the only thing, one philosophy the board could adopt is, appropriate $100,000 of fund balance, and then when we find out what the number is, you then reduce that appropriation and increase the revenue. You can use it like a contingency kind of as a placeholder. Just as an option.
On the expense side, I'll cover both, the reduction in postage and maintenance contract the same. So in anticipation of the changes to discovery, we moved from an office that was 90% paper to 90% paperless. And what it appears is with that transition, And what's kind of hard to know for sure too is how much did COVID impact this. But our costs for postage and maintenance have dropped considerably, and our best guess is that will remain. Part of the savings as well, that in terms of our look, seems to be the new provider that the county is using. But what we're proposing is we have found that carpool continues to be an expense that exceeded what our estimates were. So we were proposing to use those reductions of 500 each or 1,000 and move that into carpool to help offset the increase in carpool. As you can see, historically, we've exceeded that cost, and that's just a factor of courts increasing the frequency of appearances and hearings, et cetera. So we're looking to offset that proposed increase of 3,000 in carpool, at least by moving some of the money from postage and maintenance contract. My understanding seems to be maintenance contracts were all based on numbers of copies made, tends to be the driving cost. So if we're reducing the use of paper, that should add to it. And that will be a theme for the end of the presentation. But the other thing you're going to see is a pretty significant pull on travel. But that is for a case where we were special prosecutor and we incurred some airplane expense that was not insignificant. But once that case closes, and it is now closed, once the person's sentenced, we'll then be able to close the file, bill the other county for that travel cost. So that will come in, but my guess is at this point, we're at the end of September, it could very well be a January or February receipt, which will obviously come back in, but it's going to be out during this year.
But at the same time, if we know that's coming back, we can claim that revenue against that, right? So why wouldn't we? We will.
Yep, however you want to, I guess I look at this.
When he bills it, he'll let me know.
Yep.
Right, but I mean, I think you do that no matter when it comes back, you bill that this year. That's the process. So, is that still our travel cost, or are you projecting that because of that one case? Well, the cost will be the cost. The bill will come in on a revenue. Right, but is that what you're using to project next year's cost, or does it go back to more normal numbers?
Well, the 3,500 is what we normally have had in there, and so we would stick with that.
It's gonna be the same.
Yep, once we get back to trials and have, bail jumping and
It might get normal again.
having to go after, no, it won't be, it will be very different, but I think we'll have more costs in probably going to get people. Well, just, there's no way to predict that, so it would.
How do they hold them long enough for you to go get them?
The good news with warrants on people that have indictment warrants, they're supposed to, not all states do, some states will set bail for people that have extradition warrants, but generally they do. And they're in other states, they're not in New York. So any questions on the expenses on this page? So my last thing, and this developed, and I know it was discussed at the end of August in the public safety meeting then. I've talked with Danielle on this, and it's the state police have added body cameras. I think it was April 1st was the proclamation date. Troop G, which is our troop, was one of the early troops for getting body cameras distributed and trained where the troopers trained in the use. And that all arrived in, I think we probably figure every trooper in our county had body cameras starting July 1. And we began tracking, when we went back and looked at the amount of time that goes with that. And what we figured out was our early estimate is about 2.8 hours per body camera, per officer, so per body camera. And when we looked at the 3-year average for state police arrests on misdemeanor and felonies only, and our volume, we were coming up with a pretty significant burden in terms of body camera review that has to happen. And the challenge becomes, with the new discovery law,
they have to be turned over within, really the first 15 or 25 days after arraignment. So that puts a great pressure on somebody getting eyes on the video and reviewing it before it's turned over for a variety of reasons. So what I'm asking is to deal with that new challenge. And I think our early estimates are going to be low for what the amount of body camera ends up being, just because if you happen to get a copy of, or happen to get a radio run, listen to the amount of calls that go out, and the amount of times there is backup support or assist, whether it's because we have so few cars, it's the sheriff assisting the state police, or vice versa, in each case they have body cameras. So with most cases of significance, you're gonna end up with multiple body cameras. What we don't know is, going back to what I talked about with the discovery changes, where we went from 90% paper to 90% paperless. What that has done is changed, I think it will change the workload for the current position, which is classified as a clerk in our office. The challenge of not being able to sit here with a more definitive answer is, one, we only have had a month and a half or two experience with state police body cameras, just with the delay of getting discovery. And two, COVID. So how much of the current availability, if you will, of the clerk position is due to going paperless versus the current world of COVID, and how much has that impacted, and people still aren't coming to, courts are open, but that doesn't mean people are showing up. And how does that all play out? So what I'm hoping to do is, an advice that I heard at one of my first public safety meetings is, we don't talk about the people, we talk about the position, right? Because the people can change, but the positions ought not. And so our best guess is that the person we need is a legal assistant. That's what, when Danielle and I looked at the current classifications, what have you, that's where we hope it ends up. Our current person in the clerk position, we believe would be ideal to do that if we are guessing right as to what needs to be done with the review of these. So what I would like to do is two things. One, unrelated to this, is test out whether or not the person in the clerk position is the right person to do it. And two, is that the right job classification, or does it need to be a part-time investigator? Because we don't know yet, with the purpose of the review not being trial prep, but really preliminary discovery prep. I don't think we need a law enforcement eye per se. So what I'm proposing, though, is, and I just have no idea how this would work, is can we get a staffing pattern amendment to include a legal assistant, a grade 12 position, I guess, because right now we don't have, there's not a job classification in the county that I could find for part-time investigator, because it doesn't exist. We have a part-time senior investigator. But I was looking at, that's a 15, I believe. Legal assistant is a 12. What I'd like to do is get a tentative or a staffing pattern amendment, but we aren't going to fill it unless it turns out that we need it, in which case, obviously, I'd have to come back. But that way, I'm not trying to midstream change our budget, especially since it's something that we know this early in the budget process. If everything works out the way I hope, based on what we've looked at so far, is the proper position to do the work is legal assistant. And then the issue will be, do we need to backfill the clerk? And that's something only time will tell. I mean, certainly technology has helped maybe eliminate that, but it's just, until we live with this, we don't know what will happen in terms of that administrative side of the office. So I guess in some, yes.
So you're looking for one additional staffing position, a legal assistant?
Yes.
Here.
22.
for 2022.
Yeah, that wasn't on the list at all,
It was not, because we're kind of finding this on the fly, and with this coming up now, I thought it would be a good time to bring it up. And our goal would be, I hope I say this right. If I've looked at this properly and we've planned and what we anticipate happening comes to fruition, we would be back here looking to move the current clerk position to a legal assistant position so that the duties match the job description.
Without maybe needing
Without needing a clerk. What we could find is we need a little bit of both, but is that a part-time position? Is it full-time? I mean, as you all know, when you're dealing with businesses and staffing, adding people isn't always the right answer internally either. So we're hoping we can do it within the current context of what we have, but some of it is we just don't know. And as I think Chairman Ward asked, what happens if the other agencies add body cameras, and that is the great unknown. So if Hudson Falls adds body cameras, our three largest law enforcement bodies would have it. So right now, we're only at 2/3, sheriff and state police.
As a legal assistant or an investigator, those are the two ways you're looking to do this. Is it because do they testify, or do they just bring to your attention what they?
It's what they're seeing.
Well, they're just bringing that to your attention and you're taking it from there.
So we don't have, our attorneys don't have the time right now for that, in that first 15 or 20 days to look at every body camera. So this is not trial or hearing prep review, which the attorneys will continue to do. This is there additional discovery? All the things that we have to be able to certify under the new law, that review has to happen very quickly. And I believe it can be done by, I don't think it requires a law enforcement background necessarily to be able to do it as much as it does different skills.
Well, you also saw it now. You have to ask for it now.
Right.
And then if it gets into something in the budget, then you say it needs to be adjusted in 2022 in February, we'll come back and we'll adjust it, but you're asking for it now, so.
Right, that's our goal, is to make sure it's there, so if we need it, we can. But I anticipate if what we're looking to have happen, I will be back early in 2022 looking to change the clerk position to a legal assistant position.
Because still, but isn't it back to the clerk?
Maybe not back to the clerk.
You still want to ask for one additional position in your office for 2022.
That is the ask, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
The hope is not to need it.
No, I get you.
Yep, perfect, but that is the ask, is for
We're
that.
still a list of asks.
It's for a level.
That's what we're gonna do, we're
Right.
gonna fill in a list of asks.
And it would be for the job, the title would be a 12.
Gotcha.
Yep, for pay purposes.
When they review the film, is it, actual, or can they see through it a little bit, or is it?
You can, but it's sort of dead, it's dead time. You have some dead time, meaning where they're driving to the scene, but that might be 5 minutes. So everyone varies.
But the actual scene is actual time,
Yes.
so however long that takes,
Yep.
how long it takes to review it.
And the technology allows you to speed it up some, but not as fast as a DVR.
Any questions for Tony? Bob?
Would seem like this body camera review is gonna be a very, unpredictable amount, I would think. I feel like that's a perfect, business opportunity for some contractor to come up with people to do that. Is there have you heard anything like that? Is there, it would seem like with being so unpredictable that having an in-house person sitting there might not be the most efficient way of doing it.
Contractors that hire former DEC officials who have this expertise.
Exactly what I was thinking, yeah. In between code permits. Right.
Don't know of anyone that's doing it, and
Okay, it just seemed like that would be a business that would be popping up.
but I think every county does their review differently. It would be hard to
Okay.
streamline.
Should we get body cams for code enforcement guys?
I think we should.
Supervisor Clary.
Sue?
In looking at this, I mean, like digital storage, is the person that is going to be doing this going to be responsible for categorizing and doing record management with these files? And so it'd be more than just review. It could be review and putting it in the cloud under some category so you can retrieve it later, right? So there's a host of job descriptions in there that has to occur. The other thing is that I think Bob Hank is looking for a retirement job. You might want to start a new business.
That's just right now, right now.
I think not to the movement that comes in, what our data management system has, or the people that created it have done, because there is so much of it, and we pay by the, I wish Terry were here, either terabyte or gigabyte. The body camera from the state police is actually, it's stored off-site, meaning it's off of our system that we pay for, but we can access it through that system, and then we can upload it to defense through that system. But somehow they've navigated the World Wide Web to do it in a way that at least helps reduce the county's cost and storage. But it'll be there, they won't have to be managing.
So you can retrieve it, Tony. You can retrieve it easily. And would that person be responsible for, say, like highlighting things that of interest?
That will certainly be part of the process in the review.
Part of the job.
To try to, but it's very much on the preliminary side to alert, to save. As Chairman Ward was talking about, there is time where there's a lot not happening, but you don't know that, so you have to watch it. So the goal would be to take a 3-hour video and reduce it to about a half hour of attorney time.
Mm-hmm.
So a half hour to 45 minutes. That is our hope and goal.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa?
Tony, if you could reach out to the personnel officer as soon as possible and get that position that you're asking for on her staffing request for 2022, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I know she's going to need you to fill out a new position duty statement so that she can classify that position properly, so you actually get what it is you need.
Yeah, we had talked about it and wanted to wait to see after today, just to make sure it was something that had some possibility. Yep, but we will, thanks.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other questions for Tony?
Well, thank you all very much. Good to see you.
Well, whoa. They're going to do that. Wicks must be agile. He's never done that. He's done it so many times. He goes that way.
Glenn and Tim?
Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to run through real quick. We just uploaded and left copies of the travel plan for safety, fire, and EMS for the year. There's nothing unexpected there that we haven't done in the past. So the majority of that is either grant funded or is funding that we've had contained in our budget previously. There's nothing new that hasn't been there.
Tim, your voice is a little garbled. Your voice is a little garbled, or either that or you've been smoking a big cigar.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, but not the way we should.
Not clear. We can hear you.
All right, hang on a minute. This might be for the best.
There's also somebody standing right behind you too. I don't know if you knew that.
All right, while he's getting his audio situated, I'll go on to 3640 and we can go over that.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Main public safety.
We'll start with revenue, Glenn, or what do you want to?
Yep, so there's not really any big changes there from what we have noted. If there's isn't any questions, we can move on. It's pretty Same as every year, we're still waiting on our PSAP grant award and our emergency management grant award. We don't have that from the state as of yet.
Are you anticipating any big change there, Glenn?
No.
Just throw a zero in on it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no point putting a zero in there if you're not expecting any change.
And the PSAP has been changing. EMPG has been holding pretty close.
See, that nearly offsets what,
What's that, Brian?
it near offsets what the DA just did to us. Almost on the money. Yeah. There, go with just 150 for now, we'll amend it later, or see if you have it by the time we bring the budget out.
Last year it was 146 for the PSAP. And they haven't given us any indication of when they're going to release that.
Better to do. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Anything else for Glenn with revenues? Anything else? Talk about expenses on,
Page 63.
63? Yes. Go ahead, Glenn.
Are there any specific questions on expenses that anybody wants me to go over?
Point one be up because of the contract.
Yes, point one is increased because of the contract that was negotiated last year.
Glenn?
Yes, sir.
Your overtime line took a pretty decent jump too. Is that commensurate with the change in pay, or is it the need for using more regular dispatchers because your per diem pool has dropped so low?
Combination of both. Yes.
Okay.
I just want to add to that. Just remember, we've been running 2 full-timers short for the majority of this year and have lost 5 people through training throughout the entire year. So that certainly has put a huge hurt on our .1 budget to date as it is now, and will till the end of the year.
No, that was a great okay.
You have any new trainees lined up, Tim, or how's the new salary scale helping you out, Rudy?
We have one that just completed training, so that brings our per diems to 3 now, who potentially may be a full-time candidate for us, which drops our per diems back down. And we are starting 2 new per diems this week, but they're expected to be in training for at least 4 months if they're successful.
Mr. Happ's not here to talk about your chairs.
Way to bring a whole room.
Oh, there he is.
We can just take care of that. There's no change with the chairs. We're still in the same replacement plan we have been. We're doing 2 chairs every year.
Are they coming from Minuteman silos? Because that's what you have.
No, sir. No need to replace the workstations. They're still working well as well, just for reference.
Any other revenue questions? Other revenue questions? Any other budget questions for Tim or Glenn? Tim and I, and discussing gap coverage and gathering information for that. I think, Mr. Haff, one time was looking for some information. It was, difficult to find and, spread out throughout the county. And we discussed, if gathering that information, would help, predicting and figuring out gap coverage. And, Tim, if you'd like to expand on that?
Sure. Did you want me to run through the fire and EMS budgets real quick first, in case anybody had any questions for that?
Yeah, do that first.
Okay. I have both the fire coordinator and EMS. Ask just that I run through the budgets real quick, and if we have any specific questions regarding. There's been no change to either budget, with the exception of the training center line that we share with Warren County. The costs have increased over the last couple of years over there, and our portion of that has gone up, and we've pulled from other lines to cover that last year. So this year we just budgeted accordingly to account for that cost. And the fire side, obviously we're still working on, the fire coordinators working on replacing gear for the investigators that is either aging or completely outdated as far as personal protective gear and those things. So there are no surprises in there, continuing with the same plan that we have. And the EMS coordinator has not added anything to his budget for this year. So both of them are flat. And again, being that they're non-union or salary personnel, there's no raises or anything included in their .1 budget either.
Any questions for, about fire or EMS?
Don, I have a question.
Go ahead, Dana.
Tim, Argyle Fire recently has a mock-up training center behind their firehouse. Granville got a house to do things with. Does any of our fire departments actually use the Warren County facility over by the airport? Anybody ever use it?
The departments that are closer to the border, Kingsbury, West Fort Ann, probably Fort Ann, do use the training center in the Warren Washington County Training Center. The new one in Argyle, which was a Fort Edward and Argyle combined to get that, it's a burn center, a burn building, which the Warren Washington County one does not have. So it does get used some. I don't have numbers on how much.
Does it get used $6,000 worth?
I think it's
is that the line that you're talking about? Safety equipment 6,000, or is it a different line?
I believe it's their training other line, Mr. F. I'll pull that up here for you.
6,792.
4175. Yep. Formerly the
Okay.
budget, I believe, 1,200 and then to 1,500.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's no other questions, Mr. Ward, I can touch on. So Mr. Ward reached out. He had some concerns brought to him or his attention about some of the EMS agencies or district coverages having some issues as of late, whether it's just gap coverage, certain days and times, or certain agencies in specific. And certainly we know that everybody is doing what they can with the personnel that they have available, and with the shortage of volunteers, and certainly even more so the shortage of employees or people that are qualified to fill those gaps. Some agencies have had to rely on mutual aid coverage regularly to cover some of those holes. Now, we are not the only county that is dealing with this. There's a number of counties around us that have dealt with it in the past and have taken some proactive measures or done some research to address some of these needs, and there are some that are doing it right now. And when Mr. Ward talked to me, I mentioned to him that this could be a good opportunity to start doing that research now before we're kind of in the spot where we have to do something with very little research. So he asked that potentially we survey the EMS agencies and gather some information, and also reach out to our counterparts in the other counties that oversee EMS or oversee or coordinate the EMS agencies, to start gathering what they're doing, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. So it could potentially, if the board, would like us to do that, be a good opportunity to be able to do that now before we're in a terrible situation where we're making decisions without all the information we might need to be able to do that. Formally, a few of the board members had gone to an inter-county meeting in Essex County with Glenn and myself, that we met with Essex County's Emergency Services Coordinator and their EMS Coordinator, and some of their Board of Supervisors who launched their countywide EMS program, which has been a supplemental program to the agencies. It's been up and running for a few years now. So certainly that'd be one of the places that we'd like to look to gather some information as what's worked for them, what hasn't, and then continue to work with our neighboring counties that are also experiencing the same thing, and some other in the North Country region as well. So if that's something the board wants us to look into, we can certainly do that.
I just think gathering information, preparing for the future. Al?
And, Tim, for you and Mr. Ward and anybody else who's interested, recent training that I went to out to Syracuse, this was one of the seminars that I sat in on, and there's a couple of PowerPoints from 2 different counties on this topic that I can probably get and share with you all as well. 2 different models being done in regards to the EMS, and how the county has partnered with some of those local both paid and volunteer organizations. It was an extremely, I thought, extremely educational seminar. I'm glad I sat in on it. But I would be willing to share that information with you all to see if it was any help.
Yeah, certainly. I think we're open, the way that we're looking at this is to support the agencies as best we can. I mean, certainly we have great agencies in all of our communities. So figuring out how to support them and identify what their needs are, because they're all a little bit different. Not every one of their needs are the same. And then certainly taking all that information, and we can put it all in one spot and kind of look at everything. And then obviously look at lessons learned from some other counties that have already experienced this or are going through the same, difficulties that we are. Certainly I believe there's a lot to be able to use other people's, either good ideas, bad ideas, what's worked, what hasn't worked, instead of having to navigate the waters ourselves and put us in a bad position from the get-go.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is gather the information and get ahead of the curve a little bit, and prepare for the future, because we hear from many agencies they're all 1 or 2 people away from not being functional, so we'd like to prepare. Dana?
Yeah. I think this would be a good idea, because I asked a lot of questions of Bruce Mason, Tim, EMS companies, and quite a few of my questions were, what if? And it took a little while to find the answer. And I think if we kind of knew the what if beforehand, and Tim had a lot of the information as like a depository, it would make him much more flexible on how to react if an EMS goes out of business or gives up their certificate of need, or there's lots and lots of questions about what would happen if this domino would fall. And I think it would behoove the county to think about this beforehand and have some kind of a contingent plan, set up. Not that hopefully it will never happen, but kind of don't want to invent the wheel right on the spot.
Thank you, Dana. If we could the public safety group request that Tim gather the information, survey form? That come from the full board. Okay. Tim? Go out and gather the information for the public safety committee. But no, does everybody think it's a reasonable approach for the future? Gather it.
anytime you're proactive with something like that, when those things can happen, it's a help because you're up dire straits if not.
I think it's a good thing to do. And Tim, can you gather that information, start gathering it for the committee and for future use? So we can determine, the potential for different outcomes, and then we can get together with, different counties or different groups that have experienced it and kind of work on a direction to move into or be prepared to go to.
Will do. Yep, we'll begin that process. We'll put a survey together for our agencies, internally for all of our county EMS agencies, so we can identify, their own strengths and weaknesses, what their needs are, and then certainly move from there and identify some of the other counties around us. And we'll get those presentations to Al as well, so we can find out, who he saw in that presentation. We can contact them and gather some information there as well.
Don, one other comment. One of the questions I had asked Tim, and he was able to supply me with the information, is, Argyle EMS serves Hartford, and my question was, how often do they ask for mutual aid if they are not available? And the answer is about 14%, but is that average of all EMSs? Is that good? Is that bad? If we had information like this, the county might be able to realize beforehand that a certain EMS is not meeting their obligation to provide service. And maybe that's a pre-warning of, them maybe not staying in business. Each EMS is its own little not-for-profit corporation. So there's like a lot of cats you have to herd. But I think if Tim had direction from the Public Safety Committee, it would give him a little bit, he'd be a little bit more bona fide to request this information from the different EMS agencies, because otherwise you're not going to be able to formulate any kind of a what if plan if you don't really have the data. And I think currently a lot of EMS companies might not want to provide that data. Maybe this would encourage them to do that.
Appreciate it. It's important when someone in Washington County calls for EMS assistance that we can get it there in the proper time. I think there is some overlap, and by getting the information and working on a plan, I think will serve all our residents. Or when they call, assistance will be there. So, any questions for Tim?
Don?
Nope.
Salem had a Assemblywoman, Carrie Werner, came to the Salem Fire Department, and we actually had a good long discussion about, mutual aid, recruitment, what it is that you could keep and how you can keep volunteers actually continuing to serve. Could there be a retirement type thing at the end that would keep them there in the position longer? Could there be accredited classes that the volunteers would take, that they would get accreditation to help with recruitment? Because I think a lot of it is recruitment and maintaining staff. So Tim, if you wanted to reach out to our Assemblywoman, she's been kind of working on some of this also. Thank you.
Yep, understood. It's definitely not a single point problem. I mean, the problem is multifaceted in both the fire service and EMS. I mean, right now, EMS in general.
But the legislature needs to make EMS an essential service.
Yeah, I know one of the things Carrie has been working on in the past, and we have talked to her and some of the other assembly members and the senators, is considering EMS as an essential service throughout the state. That's been a discussion in the past. That obviously needs to happen. I mean, on the state level, that is something that just has to happen. Yeah, certainly. I actually reached out to her yesterday and told her we needed to catch up on a few things, so I will follow up with her on this as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tim?
Just a comment, Tim, the North Country has been through this over the past 20 years. They finally came to some resolutions in the same type manner. And so if you reach out to any of your North Country, I think Bill Farber probably in Hamilton County is the perfect one to talk to, and he can probably give you you the whole history of what all they went through to keep their EMS service and things, so, whether it's districts or whatever they've had to go to, they've, you know, they're just 20 years ahead of us and things going downhill. It's coming our direction and hopefully we can ward it off, but we may end up going the same way they went. So there is a path to keep the services, but it's not a cheap path. But just to put that on your radar and give you a name, this is the guy to reach out to.
Any other questions? Sheriff Murphy?
Good afternoon. Thank you. And thank you for having me go last. Got to see where all the questions were headed.
We were looking for you first. We'd be done by now.
Ah, there you go. Well, at the end of this, I do have a short PowerPoint. It's about an hour. I'm just kidding.
Hello?
Yeah. We'll start with revenues, right?
Yes.
So,
Sheriff or jail?
I'm on, well, my first page is traffic safety. It's page 1. I don't know how you guys are put together, but that's how it prints it out anyways.
750.
So, yeah, it's 3110. There's nothing, I shouldn't have to go back there because there's nothing really changes. That stays the same just about every year. There's no other differences except for the 245007 commissions and rebates for inmates. That's the tablets that we have in the jail. That's why the revenue's up quite a bit over what was adopted. It's about double, a little more than double, so that's good. And then my next page is revenue under the sheriff, 3110. The only change, one of the changes on there, I didn't add it to the budget, but, and when you were just talking about Assemblywoman Warner, she actually applied for and was able to get us a grant for $25,000 for training. And we should get that this year before the end of the year. And that was in relation to our executive order, our response to that. She was very impressed with that and was able to help us out with some money for training. So appreciate that. Nothing really else on that page.
Or is that coming every year?
It's a one-time this year grant. And she, you know, obviously she represents a lot of different districts with a lot of different agencies. So we were fortunate to be able to get that. So then the next page, which is page 3 for me, under the jail 3150, one of the changes down there, this is related to the food costs for the 280101 interdepartmental revenues. That is up, as you can see. That's related to, again, the increase in the food costs. And that is something that's reimbursable through OFA, through the state. We're not sure if, you know, the prices are going to come down or not, but that's, we hope so, because they're higher than they've ever been, really. And it's been difficult, like with every other industry, trying to get vendors to reply to bids, and also truck drivers to deliver this stuff and everything else that goes along with it. Then on the next page for revenue, that's all pretty much in line with past years. Nothing really different on that. Then when we get into the expenses, my first page is traffic safety. Again, there's nothing different from that from past years. The next line is the sheriff admin line. That is a little higher because 2 people came out of patrol and went into this admin group, but that also means that 2 people came out of the patrol group for payments and expenses.
We talk about that?
Yeah.
Their whole salary transferred from patrol to admin?
Yes. It wasn't a full year, this year because it happened like mid-year, I think, so.
If we're looking at $431,000 in .1, 512, only, what, $80,000? That can't be two people. This is something else.
Well, the fringe would be separate.
I mean, I can recheck the math, but that's what we came up with. And that was adopted, you know, I'm not sure where we're at. Usually what I do is I'll take the actual amount where we're at now, obviously, and then look at what the added salaries are going to be for the number of hours for the next year, but I can certainly recheck that.
So if two people came out of patrol, you'd think patrol would go down, but patrol went up anyway.
Not there yet.
I'm not trying to cause a problem, I'm just trying to get a relationship.
Control. Well, that could be, what was it 2325? That could be the percentage, the raise percentage.
So don't forget they had another significant contract settle in 21 as well. It was a decent.
Typically on that,
Patrol people leaving patrol with the raises, it still came up above budget from last
But I
year.
do want to follow up on your first question, though, that the 40,000 can't necessarily be two bodies. I'd like to follow up on that one.
I know I jumped ahead a little on patrol, but I'm just trying to get a relationship.
But I want to look at his budget to budget .1 and just see if in total it makes sense. In case if it's a split between the departments, Matt, I don't want to know about that.
Okay.
That's an easy fix, as long as and if the bundle looks good, then, you know. And I think that Melissa's office is going through that exercise now, looking at the request versus the staffing pattern. So she might be in a better position, but I can look at the bundle to see what it looks like in total.
That's up 80 for 6 months.
Yeah.
It'd be a hundred. That might not be too bad for two. All right.
So it'll be more than 40.
Fees?
No, total, for two.
It's 80.
But
80 right now.
it's already happened.
Oh, no, never mind, I'm sorry.
We adopted it last year where it was at 431, and then we're looking at an $80,000 increase adopted for next year.
That's right. That seems a little light, that's all.
Well, if we move two full people.
Right. But again, if you look at his department as a whole, I'd be more interested in that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
Between the line items, that's an easy fix.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I'll recheck that math on that as well.
Thanks, Sheriff.
The treasurer stealing one of the seats?
Hey.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
Okay. So I'm on the sheriff expense page, starting with the 2010. I did put $5,000 in there. Historically, there's, you know, we never, I don't think anyways, put anything in that line, but we also run into, you know, issues that where we don't have money for any kind of office equipment like chairs or anything like that throughout the year. So the only other line is on that page is that equipment line down a little lower, and that's only $5,000 as well. That's the only change on from year to year. Basically, you know, as you know from me doing this, I mean, I go back and look at our 5-year history. There's no other changes on, significant changes anyways, on any of those lines going down until we get to the patrol, which Supervisor Hicks was just talking about, the 3112. Was there any questions on any of those lines?
Sheriff, I have a question.
Yep.
Don?
Go ahead, Dan, excuse me.
Sheriff, underneath the expenses of admin, it's right underneath the K9. There's something called installations. What is, To me, an installation is a building or a campus. What is installations?
Yeah, that's been the title for that for a long time, but generally a lot of stuff that comes out of that is like Adirondack two-way for radio stuff for the cars, different things to do with the cars, basically, if we have to have things installed.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Don?
Yes, so,
Sheriff, on the education and training, is it all grouped under Sheriff admin for like his patrol underneath the
Yep.
admin?
4170?
Yes.
Yeah, that's for the whole department, yeah. I mean,
So-
the roadside.
So 4170 for the patrol, it doesn't show any for education, training, and staff development, but up under admin?
Yeah, it's not just for admin, if that's the question. That's for all these items are related to the whole patrol side. No, are you asking if that's just for administration?
Yeah, what I'm wondering is if that it is combined, there seems to be two lines for that. One under patrol, right? The 4170. And then if you go up, where did I see it before? On 4170 on the admin page, there is 10,000. On page 51.
Yeah, you have a different page system than I do. The only one that we have that I have that's education, training, staff development, 4170, $10,000.
Okay,
And that's for, again, that's for the road side. So it's anybody, patrol, sergeants, investigations, administration.
okay. So actually that one line is not necessary then on the next page. For us, not in yours.
Where it is.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Sheriff, I think that's the one that's under the SPOs. The 0.3112.4170.
That's correct, Melissa. Yes, that's correct.
It's under the SPOs.
Yeah, that's 0, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Yeah, the other one is the only one that we've had historically that we use for training.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh,
And-
you only have, for the whole shooting match, you only have $35,000. So it's a mixture of a deletion and an addition that cancel each other out. Right, 5,315,000 versus 5,351,000.
I'm back on the 21 question.
I'm looking at the grand totals. If the grand totals are pretty much dead nuts on, then it's an adjustment one way or the other, so it's not that relevant.
As long as he has what he needs, it's not relevant.
Exactly. You'll double check that to make sure it's accurate as opposed to.
Yeah, I want to make sure you got enough, unfortunately.
I looked at your totals, Sheriff, grand totals of expenses are pretty much matching.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I would like the opportunity, I'm not making excuses, but I make this plea every year, but the timing is very difficult for me to get this in. It's the week after the fair every year, the first day back to work, work after the fair, when it has to be in and locked. And I can say I found out this year that Sandy Huffer is very good at locking the system. You can't get back in. I did want to get back in and make a couple of changes, which I'll address in a minute, but I was told I couldn't do that, so rightfully so. So, but yeah, I mean, the numbers aren't that far off, but I would like the opportunity to, sit down with anybody and look at this again on a couple of different points. One of them.
You might remember a couple of staffing changes too, Sheriff.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to change was on the next line down on my page anyways, is 3112 patrol, 121 SPO, the SPO earnings. I didn't think that in the past that I put that in the budget, and I didn't think that I put the revenue in the budget. So I was kind of waiting to get the answer on that and then submitted my budget and try to get back in and change it. So I don't have the salary in New World for that line, the regular earnings SPO, which is $170,000. So that should be on that line. And then the revenue is a little bit more, and that's why I wanted to double check that. I have 190,000 on the revenue side related to that line.
We should make a little for you keeping them in line.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always a tricky one too, because of the hours that they work and trying to calculate what those hours are and how much the reimbursement is going to be. On that same page for patrol, you can see I kept the overtime at last year's amount. We're actually pretty good with the road overtime right now, knock on wood. You know, due to a lot of, I think, scheduling expertise that's being done. So, you know, it's probably going to go up a little bit because we are short a few bodies right now at the end of the year. But hopefully, you know, we have a new list. We're going to be hiring some new people. And then once we get them back from training, we have one in the academy now, so we'll get them back by the first, or in the first month of next year. So we won't be so bad off. So that's why I think that's a pretty close to accurate amount there. And then along those lines, the reason I called to make the change was on my next page, which is 3110, 3112 patrol. And it's 128, which is the on-call pay. That's a new thing that came out with the last contract for the union. I did not put an amount in there, which is, we figured 25,000. So that should be on that line, 128 on-call pay. And that's, like I said, that came up in the contract. So that's sergeants and investigators that get an on-call stipend for being on call.
What was that number again, 28,000?
25. 25. If there's no questions on that, if you go down to contractual, there's nothing that's changed under that. The part-time, kept that pretty static. Again, it's not, we haven't really used that much this year, but that's one of those things that you never know as well. We use a lot of part-time officers in civil, for instance, to help with evictions and papers and all that stuff. And as you know, there's been a moratorium on that, but it's recently been lifted. So I think next year we'll probably go back up to closer what we anticipated to spend this year. And I don't have anything else on that page that is any different than the past. And then my next page is civilian 3114. I don't have any changes on that from prior years.
Is your rate way down on state retirement? Is that why it's lower?
I don't know. Those are numbers that are provided to me. Not treasurer.
No, it's even down in the one above them, it's patrol.
Yeah, but if you go to state retirement under jail, it's up, way up.
But they have different retirement programs there.
Yeah, the
And countywide, the phone will be the phone.
Oh, it's just when they're split out.
Don't get hung up.
Okay.
Don't get
Yeah,
hung up, please.
Okay.
That's where the other, as we get closer to more actual tentative presentation,
We'll get them closer.
no, I'll do just a Frank report for you all, so that you can take these that might look nonsensical in the department review, countywide, so So that way you can have the department number in that cost world, and you can still have that total and feel comfortable that, because I think that once you see that the total is the total is the total, the allocation of it, I don't want you to get hung up with the allocation.
No, but we don't do a better job with allocation. If it's not accurate, it throws out your net cost, that's all.
But the net cost will be based on actual, and actual is.
Okay, very good.
Right. So when I do the actual allocation, it's from the distribution from the retirement system. There's no guess on the actual. The budget is, the left half of the budget is, the allocation in the budget is based on salary. The problem with that is 90% of your part-timers don't have retirement, but the salary is still figured in. So it's.
I got a better way
I
to
don't-
do that, that we'll discuss offline.
Okay. Dana, you have a question?
Yes, Sheriff, underneath your part-time 3113, you said you have $100,000 for regular earnings.
Yes.
Could that be marked down to 75,000, and then that extra 25,000 would go up to 3112 on-call pay? Because you needed 25,000 for the on-call pay, but there's nothing in the budget?
Yeah, it could. Like I said, my only concern is that, this year there's been very little activity in our civil office as far as the part-time officers that we normally would use a lot more than what we did this year because of the eviction moratorium. There's no evictions, and a lot of civil stuff that normally goes on doesn't go on. So, I mean, you certainly could. I might be coming back and saying, that we use part-timers more than I thought we were going to. We did add one just recently, one part-time deputy. So, it certainly could be done, yes. But I don't know, I'd like to always err on the side of caution as far as that goes. But
Well, if I look at the 2019 actual and the 2020 actual, 2019 was 84,000, 2020 was 52,000. 75 is kind of in there, in the middle, sort of. But that would find 25,000 for the on-call pay if you just took the part-time earnings down to 75,000 and take that 25,000 up to on-call.
I like that.
yeah, I'm good with that. That's fine.
All right, thank you.
You should have been here a week or so ago, then, or 2 weeks ago.
That's all right. I found 22,000 the other day, so I'm doing okay.
If you can find that 170 he needs, that'd be great.
I might have to stay up past 9 o'clock at night to do that.
Like moving down for me, down to equipment on the jail side, I did increase. So Dana, we got to try to find some more money here. I did increase 2090 only because I mean, we've been running this jail year after year after year with this $2,500 amount. And again, I also don't have the ability right now to go back and look at that history like you just did. But I know that we have some aging equipment. We have a stove that's not working now, an oven, sorry. One of the washing machines for the inmates' clothing and stuff like that is out of service. We're trying to limp through until we can get to next year to try to fix those things. But again, I just don't think it's realistic to go with such a low number. We did get some estimates. I think the washing machine was around $12,000 and the stove or the oven was more than that. So I just kind of ballparked it at 20,000. Well, again, the stuff's not getting any younger that's in the equipment anyways, inside the jail.
That looks pretty good.
And then if you go further down on the under the SAM under 3150, 3152, I did want to point out a couple of lines. One of them is 4,300, which is medical supplies, which is not what it sounds like. That's actually related to our pharmacy billing. Our medications in the jail this year took a hit. I know I brought it up at one of the meetings just to kind of give a forewarning thing. We had a handful of inmates that were on some very expensive medications. Hasn't happened since I've been here where we had the same amount of people like that on such high medications. So that is going to be quite a bit over. And again, that's one of those things that you just can't plan for. And actually, we did switch to a new pharmacy 2 years ago, I believe. They actually give us credit back on unused medications, things like that. So our medication costs have been good. So we just didn't expect that. We didn't see that. We're down to one of those inmates left right now. I think that's kind of high, but drug cost wise. So I think I did talk to the treasurer, and we kind of agreed to just keep it down to not try to budget next year as if we had the same issues that we had this year. And then the other one that we didn't anticipate was 4642, which is inmate supplies, non-medical. One of the things that comes out of that line is COVID testing. We had almost 1,000 COVID tests done in the jails, over 900 COVID tests. They had to be done on inmates, staff. Whenever we did have a little, as you know, we did have a little issue there where we had a couple, half a dozen positive cases. So that meant that we had to do quite a bit of testing. So that was not anticipated, but hopefully I think in talking with the treasurers also might be light at the end of the tunnel with that as far as some reimbursement for some of that cost.
Anything else for the sheriff? No.
Sheriff, on the medications,
Yes.
Is there a charge back to the county of origin or place of origin for those medications, or do we assume that cost when they come in?
We don't. Yeah, are you talking if we board in inmates?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have any boarded in inmates from other counties right now, and we only have to check. But because of COVID, we weren't boarding in inmates like we did in the past for obvious reasons.
Sheriff, when I was in the audit meeting,
Yep.
I signed vouchers. They were Saratoga County inmates, and the cost of the medication was like $36,000 for the month.
I have to double check on that. I'm not sure. How long ago was that?
It had to be 3 months ago. I think they were Saratoga County and female inmates.
Yeah, I'll check on that. I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. I know
Where they come doesn't matter. I'm just thinking, do we have a policy in place for chargeback to counties, or is it in our contracts that we assume the medication?
Not that I'm aware of, but like I said, I'll check on it. I know we do. I'm going to say no, because I know when we discussed boarding in inmates in the past, it was brought up that, before COVID and everything else, there were it was actually in Vermont, there was a jail there that was looking to find places to bring inmates. So in trying to put together some kind of MOU with them, we're going to make sure that we didn't assume any medical cost at all. But that was something unique because they're out of state, and also, if we're going to get that many inmates, we wanted to have something to address that. So to answer your question, I'm not sure. I don't think so though, but I will look and see.
Thank you. The other question, do we have to, do we pay for vaccinations for the inmates? Because I haven't seen any of those costs.
No, we weren't charged for those, just like we weren't charged to vaccinate employees.
Okay, so the only thing that we're incurring is the vaccination, or actually the COVID testing at $100 a pop.
Yeah, the COVID test, right?
Yeah.
And those came out of the blue. Like we didn't. They're pretty late billing us for those. We weren't aware of that. We still would have done the same testing, but we just weren't aware that was going to come about.
The only we just did the ones for the schools, and the tests were $20 each to go out to the schools. I'm thinking the county should consider doing the jails testing. It's $20 a test compared to $100 a test.
Yeah, I'm open to anything.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Sheriff, there are no other questions. Do you have any personnel dream sheets?
I do.
Personnel request 22?
I do. I have one that is clerk typist position. Looking to change that to senior clerk. Currently, there are 2 people working in the in the pistol permit office doing the exact same duties. One is a senior clerk, one is a clerk typist. I think it's only right that they both have the same title, they both perform the same duties, work the same hours, have the same responsibilities, everything that goes along with it. I didn't want to bring this up during the year, so I would like to ask that for 2022 that we're able to amend the staffing pattern and remove the clerk typist and have the senior clerk. The difference is $5,262 by my calculations. The difference between what the annual salary for clerk typist and senior clerk would be.
Any other?
Be eliminating one, basically, title and changing it. Yeah, and the other bigger ticket item is, as I've brought up, I think a couple times at some other public safety meetings, we're seeing some unprecedented things going on as far as the road patrol. The number of calls not only the number of calls that we're getting, but the types of calls that we're getting and the types of people that we're dealing with. We've had more recent firearm related calls and where actually shots were fired, I think since I've been here. So also the fact that, and I think I've talked to some of the supervisors about it as well, but a lot of times we'll have 3 cars on for the whole county. And when I listen to the radio or watch our records management or the CAD system or whatever, they're pretty much going from call to call to call to call and with no time in between. You know what, our risk is, number one, not being able to respond to calls for service because we're tied up with, if we have a serious personal injury accident, for instance, we're going to have a couple cars already tied up there, and investigators and everybody else. So if something else happens in a different part of the county, we're just not going to be able to respond to that. And then if we have an extended incident, such as a search for someone, or another one of these shootings that we've had, I'm sure you've read the news or you've seen that. I don't want to risk becoming a reactive department as opposed to a proactive office, which is what we've always prided ourselves on, and being able to do all the public things that we do with our community first motto and all the different public related things that we do around the county. So when we looked at our scheduling, we looked at our ability to respond, the dream would be 6 deputies. I know that's a little too much to ask for, but 4 deputies would give us the ability to have an extra car on a couple of these shifts where these calls were coming. We do a lot of directed patrols. We do a lot of where we look at not only our call volume, but the type of call, where the call is happening, what communities, what townships, so that we can have sufficient manpower for those different townships. The issue becomes with our staffing as well when we're short, like we are now, even though it's only a few bodies and we have people in the academy, or 1 now, and we're going to be able to have 3 off this current list go to the academy, but we're not going to see them for probably till June of 2022. So that's why it would help immensely to have 4 more bodies that would be able to fill in and be here while other people are off for whatever reasons, or we have vacancies, because the vacancies are really the thing that hamper our ability to have enough patrols out on the road. And I certainly can gather information, statistical information, whatever you'd like to be able to show you. And I also like to remind everyone that that's one of the biggest things that came out of that executive order, even though it was, a very lengthy process for us to comply with. It actually was a good process, and it actually helped us to look at our agency and how we're providing a service to the public. And the overwhelming response from the survey questions to the people in the public was that they'd like to see more patrols, they'd like to see more deputies, they'd like to see more coverage. So I would too, and my request would be that we're able to add 4 deputy positions to the 2022 staffing table.
Sheriff, one of the big things I keep hearing, and I think so many other supervisors do, is traffic enforcement. The added positions, could any be dedicated to traffic or traffic control or issues around the county?
Yes, and there's funds too. There's grant funding that comes out, as you all know. They call it Bunny, like Buckle Up New York, Stop DWI. There's different sources of funding that could come in. But quite honestly, we find it difficult to be able to dedicate people to DWI or to the Buckle Up New York or to the different programs that come out, because they're too busy taking calls. So they're going from one call to the other. And I would say that the highest number of calls per township are traffic related. So there's people complaining about speeding vehicles, reckless drivers, things like that. And for us to go and patrol that area and sit in that area and run radar and things like that, at our current staffing, it's virtually impossible. We try to use the radar signs that are great, but it's difficult also to keep those in some spots. And so, to replace there's nothing that can replace a deputy that's there that monitors the traffic, is able to do enforcement and try to help those people out in those different areas that are having a problem with the traffic issues. And like I said, now they're either, it just takes one bad accident on a shift, and which we're seeing more and more of, unfortunately, for whatever reason. But that ties up, between traffic control, investigating the accident, taking statements, doing all the things that go along with that. Basically, those deputies are tied up for hours. And then in the meantime, the calls just keep coming in from different parts of the county related to other things.
Dana?
Sheriff, if you had 4 more bodies, would you need another patrol car, or do you have sufficient vehicles?
So we looked at some of the other related costs, and if some of the issues are that I did try to help out by not getting any new cars in 2019. We took it right out of the budget. Didn't know we were going to start having the problems with the chips where now we can't get new cars. So we haven't gotten new vehicles since 2019. Those are, I think, the ones that were ordered in 2018 or whatever. But so the answer would be that I think we would be able to keep a couple of cars that we normally would turn in to the fleet, to carpool. Although those miles are getting up there on some of the cars, but I think we get away with it for next year, without having to purchase any additional vehicles than what we've already ordered and have been waiting for. We're waiting on 3 right now, I think, Dana. And then this year we have 4 that are about to be ordered, as I'm sure you've heard through other departments or through highway anyways, that there was all kinds of stuff going on with new cars. We weren't able to get the ones we wanted. So long story short, we have 4 that are going to be ordered, 3 that are coming. So that's going to be helpful. I think we can get through next year without any extra vehicles, and then we'll see where we're at for 2023. The other related costs are kind of small. Handguns, I think we would only need to have 2 because we do have an armory where we do have some extra weapons. And the other things are like vests, which, as you know, are reimbursable through the different program. So I don't see any other big cost that would be related to that.
What's the cost of 4 people?
150,000, 152,000.
That's just wages, not the benefits.
Correct.
So what do you add on top of that? 40%?
48.
Yeah. A little more than 40%.
What's that, 210?
25.
How much?
225. 225?
I think you're low.
That's, what's that? I'm sorry.
I think it takes 300,000.
Well, it was based on 38,084 for salary, or without benefits.
Any other questions for Sheriff? Other questions? Okay. There being no further business, we are finally adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.